Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for our weekly devotional. I'm Justin Allison, the discipleship pastor here at Greenwood, and I'm so excited to have you with us today as we continue on looking at the character of David in 1 Samuel is where we're going to be today. We're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 24, and today we're actually going to look at the entire chapter of 1 Samuel 24. It's not a super long chapter, but it is mid-level long. So be prepared for that. And in this story, because it's a Old Testament narrative, the way that this is going to work is the narrator shows us something about the character of David through his actions. And so today it's not necessarily speech, although there is some speech from the lips of Saul about David, but it's actually confirming something that the narrator has already shown us in his actions. So let's pay attention to the actions that David takes today in this story that we're going to read in 1 Samuel chapter 24. So let's go ahead and read that now. After Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told that David had gone into the wilderness of En-Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. It's an interesting place name, the rocks of the wild goats. And verse 3, at the place where the road passes some sheepfolds, Saul went into a cave to relieve himself. Yes, that's what it actually says. But as it happened, David and his men were hiding farther back in that very cave. Now's your opportunity, David's men whispered to him. Today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power to do with as you wish. So David crept forward to cut off a piece of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid it that I should do this to my lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him. So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. After Saul had left the cave and gone on his way, David came out and shouted after him, my lord the king. And when Saul looked around, David bowed low before him. Then he shouted to Saul, why do you listen to the people who say I am trying to harm you? This very day you can see with your own eyes it isn't true. For the Lord placed you at my mercy back there in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you. For I said, I will never harm the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It is a piece of the hem of your robe. Now, I should say that the term my father there is kind of an affectionate ancient Near Eastern idiom for addressing one who is in authority over you. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It's a piece of the hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. This proves that I am not trying to harm you and that I have not sinned against you, even though you have been hunting for me to kill me. May the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you're trying to do to me, but I will never harm you. As that old proverb says, from evil people come evil deeds. So you can be sure I will never harm you. Who is the king of Israel trying to catch anyway? Should he spend his time chasing one who is as worthless as a dead dog or a single flea? May the Lord therefore judge which of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate, and he will rescue me from your power. In verse 16, when David had finished speaking, Saul called back, is that really you, my son David? Then he began to cry, and he said to David, you are a better man than I am, for you have repaid me good for evil. Yes, you have been amazingly kind to me today, for when the Lord put me in a place where you could have killed me, you didn't do it. Who else would let his enemy get away when he had him in his power? May the Lord reward you well for the kindness you have shown me today. And now I realize that you are surely going to be king and that the kingdom of Israel will flourish under your rule. Now swear to me by the Lord that when that happens, you will not kill my family and destroy my line of descendants. So David promised this to Saul with an oath. Then Saul went home, and David and his men went back to their stronghold. So in this story, really, there's two things you can notice. Both of them have to do with actions that David took. First of all, David did not listen to his men. As you could tell from the story, some of the people wanted David to go ahead and kill Saul right there in the cave. As the story points out a few times, it looks like the Lord has delivered Saul right into the hand of David for him to defeat right there. And yet Samuel, and yet David doesn't do it, because David does not harm the Lord's anointed. He reiterates that a few times in this story. And so David didn't listen to the voices around him. Instead, he acted in the way that God would have him act. You see, David didn't take the easy way out. He didn't listen to the voice of his friends. Instead, what David did was he was faithful to the commands of the Lord. And that's something you and I can do well to follow. We can follow that example by choosing not to listen to the people around us when they tell us to take an easy way out. When it looks like we can, maybe seize something that God's shown us a hope or a vision of, we think we have an opportunity maybe to get ahead in life, take the easy way, maybe cheat on something and get ahead. But that's not what David did, and that's not what you and I are called to do either. Instead, God calls us to be people of high character, people who trust him over and above anything that looks easy in the moment. And so you and I would do well to follow David's example there. And the other thing that we see about David is that he points out to Saul that he is never going to harm him. David had been anointed. David had seen the future, that he would be king in Israel, and yet David didn't try to make that happen. He did not look for any way to force the issue and to get ahead. He wasn't conniving. He wasn't prideful as I sometimes am. He wasn't trying to advance himself. Instead, as you can see from the story, he put first serving the Lord, and he put first the people of God, serving them as well. That was his second level of priority. So he didn't want to do anything that would harm his relationship with God or the people's relationship with the Lord either. And so David took those things seriously. You and I can take those things seriously as well. Maybe God has asked us to start a business or to lead people in a certain area. Well, don't try to use that as an excuse to promote yourself and to try to get ahead in life. Instead, we would do well if we follow David's example by trusting the Lord to do what he's already shown us he's going to do, waiting and being patient, using those fruit of the Spirit, patience, goodness, gentleness, self-control, to wait on the Lord and to see what he's going to do in our life to bring us to that point where he's promised us that we're going to go. And so we see that in the life of David. I hope that you will take that example to heart and that you will follow those things to this week. So I hope that's helped you, and I hope that you will join us on a Sunday, whether that's online or in person. So we would love to connect with you then. Y'all have a wonderful week.